All right. Welcome everybody to the third in what is our series of master classes for finance leaders and executives. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects in the world of AI and agentic AI, which is cash application. Title being autonomous cash application straight through processing with AI. In other words, how you go from 0 to 90+% automation by deploying agents and agentic AI. All right, so if you have not joined one of my sessions before, my name is Phyllis Saavedra. I lead the customer success team here at Emagia. Um, Myself, I've been a practitioner in order to cash for many years, really making my name in things like finance transformation and technology. I've been in a variety of industries and most recently came back to Emagia to lead the customer success team and help others, deploy their vision with technology, finance transformation, and agentic AI. As I mentioned, I work here at Emagia. This is definitely not a sales pitch. Those that know me, I'm not big on the salesy approach, but I do think it's good to know who our quote unquote benefactor is today, who is sponsoring this webinar. So a little bit about Emagia. We are a global leader in the automation space of all things order to cash. We're built on a platform of technology, and our modules include everything from an agentic AI-based order management onboarding solution through credit collections and obviously cash application. We also have an agentic studio, so we help our customers build agents and things for themselves. We've been around about 15 years. Our product has been deployed in 27 different languages in over 70 at least countries. We're also have a good number of partners. We integrate with many of the technology partners, the ERP leaders like SAP, Oracle, NetSuite, people like that, industry leaders, people like NACM, Shared Services Network. Of course, we have many technology implementation and outsourcing partners as well. And then last but certainly not least is our sister company Solix, which is a big data company, which actually really helps with our data layer and aggregating many of the files that we use here at Emagia. All right, so let's move on to the agenda for today. First thing we're going to talk about is the complexity gap of handling manual cash application. Next, we'll move on to the technology pillar. So how we're going to use AI to replace that manual effort. The touchless workflow will come next. So how we can use agents for at least 90 to maybe even 100% of the cash application process. And then we'll talk about where we're going with this whole thing. So we'll talk about generative AI and the future of AR. And then finally, I'll give you a use case, which I think is going to resonate really well with those of you that are finance leaders managing the area of order to cash within the cash application within the area of order to cash. So there's some really great use cases out there today. The complexity gap of handling manual cash application. If you really think about it, manual cash application has been a multi-step process. The complexity gap comes in because now you're being asked basically to do more with less. The processes are much more complex than they used to be. It used to be, we'll say, back in the Stone Age, it's like 5 years ago or so. Cash application would come in. Many of us would pay to have our banks do everything for us. We might have lockbox services or things like that. The bank deposits would come in. Somebody or hundreds of people would be sitting at desks. They'd have to look up into their ERP. They'd apply the payment that came in, and that's how cash would get applied. Nowadays, it's gotten far more complex. Sure. We're having to deal with third-party providers. where we have to secure information, whether it's securing information from your bank or it's securing information from a third party portal, something like an Ariba, Coupa, Tungsten, or any of the proprietary portals. Many of you may have customers that use like the Home Depot portal or Amazon portal or even 7-Eleven, any of these portals. So now you have to pull information not just from your bank, from a portal. Then customers are sending in remittance advice in a variety of ways. Some of them may come through email aliases like remittances at. Others may come through cases. I talked to a customer the other day. They have remittance email coming through remittances at, but it's through their NetSuite cases. So there's a variety of ways it's coming in. So we're going to take a look at how this manual effort compares to what we can do using AI and how AI is going to replace the high volume of manual tasks within cash application. I'm a big fan of using Agentic AI for cash application. I think if anybody's thinking about starting a project, it's a great place to start. It's a highly labor-intensive process. And as we talk about the complexity gap, as you can see with the changing landscape, it's also become more complex. We're also, as we grow as businesses, we're seeing more and more payments come in. And so we often struggle with the high volumes, and we can utilize AI and the Agentic AI processing cash application sort of as, we'll call it the exoskeleton for managers. It's going to allow teams to handle at least 10x the volume, and it's also going to become more precise because you're going to get 100 times more precision with this. You can set rules, you can set write-off rules, you can set rules that allow letters and things like that and correspondence to go out based on the type of deduction that maybe a customer makes or what's happening. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. And then finally, when we talk about the complexity gap, we talk about the predictive actions that are available to us. So AI has the capacity to handle complex customer segments, and it can also predict next best action. I'm sorry, I'm a little tongue-tied this morning, but it can predict, basically customers' payment behaviors. It can also look at things by their customer's profile. You can generate correspondence or write-offs, or you can respond to a customer's payment based on the predictive nature of that business and perhaps of that business segment. So let me talk about technology. I mean, that's really what we're here to talk about, and the technology and how that's really replacing that manual effort in cash application. Really, as we talk about it, I just talked about the complexity gap. I've had many managers over the years that have said, don't complain to me unless you come to me with a solution. Well, here's your solution. I'm going to whine about the complexity gap. It's gotten difficult. It's gotten hard. There's lots of sources that are out there. So how am I going to fix it? I'm going to utilize the current technology, and that being Agentic AI. So first thing I want to talk about is automated data ingestion. That's the key part where we're really replacing the manual collection of all the documentation that comes through. The specific types of technology we use, intelligent document processing, or if you happen to be an Emagia customer, we use something called GeoDocs AI. What does all of this do for us? It allows AI-powered multi-OCR. Traditional OCR is kind of, a thing of the past, but it's multi-OCR engines to automatically capture payments and remittance data. As I said, it's coming from multiple sources these days. Not only is it coming from multiple sources, it comes in multiple formats. So we can pull in both structured as well as unstructured data. We can pull in things from the AP and procurement portals. We can also take information, if any of you are still using EDI, things like the EDI 820 report that's used in cash, all of these different sources. When you think about it, that is, if we look at sort of the historic progression of cash application, we first went to, manual people and lots of people posting cash. Then we got to sort of traditional or more generative AI, where we were pulling from a single source like a bank, and it was doing a lot of the work for us. Now, what we've done is we've gone from just being able to pull information from the bank and the lockbox and that information to being able to pull from a variety of sources, match all that up, and get to the point where we can eliminate almost 100% of the key-in features that happened previously. For those that are looking, this is my little personal tip. If you ever want to implement a cash app process, you're looking for ways to generate an ROI. How are you going to explain to management how you're going to save money? One of the first areas is it's not just headcount. It's not just maybe outsourcing services. It's also those lockbox fees, and you can save a good number of your banking fees as well. So the second component of the step is AI-driven invoice matching. So it used to, I say this a lot, it used to be, and used to be was only a year or two. In some cases, many of you are still doing this, but it's the AI-powered matching engine is what we're using now. So you're pulling from a variety of sources, and it may be looking for an invoice amount. It may be looking for a sales order. It's also looking for things like deductions. It comes in. It can also analyze historical payment patterns so that the system learns, and like, here's the example that I like to use. So you might have a customer that always cuts off a digit of their invoice number, or you have a customer that refuses to put in their invoice number. Maybe they only put in a purchase order number or a sales order number. Maybe they don't give you anything and they just sort of pay in one lump sum. What we see, like if you get an ACH transmittal from a bank, oftentimes you don't get any specifics with that. So what this does, where you get the ability to match invoices, perhaps you have a remittance email address, you have a remittance alias. So you get this ACH, there's no information. Now you don't have to have somebody sitting behind a computer trying to figure out what invoices they wanted to pay, going and searching in this remittances at email box. It automatically matches it up. It finds the remittance. Now you know what invoices they wanted to pay. You may also know what disputes or deductions that they're also taking. It's a great way. This is like the next step in the process. Through this process of auto matching and multiple sources, you can really get to at least 90 to 95% auto matching rates with AI cash application. You're going to reduce your workload up to 85%. Now, if you think about it, I'm not here to tell you that humans are going away. The concept of human in the loop, and I think we've talked about it in several other of the master classes. You still need people to manage exceptions. You may need them in the loop because you have what some of us call enterprise customers, VIP customers. There's always going to be some exception to the rule. So the nice part about it is your Cash App folks go from just key punch operators to thought provocative analysts and really detectives in trying to figure out the more complex payment deductions and payment receipts. So the third thing I'm going to talk about is predictive exception handling. This is the big area. Over the years, what I've found in my experience in AR is that when customers dispute and disputes are not handled well, or they take a deduction, say, maybe it's a company, if it's a US-based company, for example, and they say that they should not be charged tax. They believe they have a resale certificate on file. All of these things slow down payment. If you think about it that once an AP team, if they get they get a request for a payment. If the PO's there, the dollar amounts match, that payment goes out smooth as silk. Pardon me. But when a payment has a dispute or a deduction, gets thrown in the problem pile. So your terms are net 30. Maybe now it doesn't even extend out to 40 days. Now you're at 60 days because somebody's trying to figure out the problem. So when you're utilizing Agentic AI to help with this exception processing, so maybe your customer has taken a deduction, an Agentic AI can recommend a next best action. Good example that I would use is, say you're a company that ships tangible product. You ship tangible product to your customer. Your customer has paid all their invoices, except that they say one was a short shipment. Using agents in the cash application process, it can see that perhaps this deduction was a short shipment. Now, instead of having somebody go out and do the research, the system identifies the fact it's a short shipment. Instead of going to a human, it automatically goes out to your freight forwarder. It can pull a proof of delivery, maybe a bill of lading. It attaches that. It sends a letter out to your customer, says, thank you for your payment. We noticed that you disputed this discrepancy. Attached is a copy of the bill of lading and your proof of delivery. And as you can see, we shipped you everything. Please contact us if there's any further problems, things like that. Obviously, correspondence is going to be drafted for specific customers. But now we've gotten all the way through payment, deduction, as well as sending the documentation without ever even having to put a human in. Now, if it becomes a much more complex discrepancy and you need to get your shipping department involved, maybe that's where the human comes into the process. Really, the impact, and this is a huge impact and a huge cash flow driver, you can accelerate that exception resolution by 40, 60%. I am really not overselling this. And like I said, in my experience over the years of managing all sizes of order to cash departments, disputes and deductions are the number one reason that drive late payments and drive, in my opinion, that is, increased DSO numbers. The fourth thing, and the other thing that I find is very important, when you think about the modern day order to cash department, we are really customer service departments. Back in the day, it used to be that your credit and collections team called up a customer and said, pay their bill. And if you paid your bill on time, you were great. If you didn't, you were put on credit hold. No one ever used to think about that next part of the cycle, right? So the next sale to that same customer. So nowadays, when we think about order to cash being a customer service or a customer success team, we really want to do things that make it seamless and easy for our customers to do business with us. So this number 4 area, real-time ERP posting, what it's doing is now through this entire automated process, through this entire process of matching, of sending out letters, handling deductions, now we're getting real-time cash posting to the ERP. Now you're not accusing customers of being delinquent that aren't delinquent. You're seeing payments come in. You're also, if you have a customer that has a very tight credit limit, maybe they count on every payment coming in. They need that to pay down their balance so that they can get their next order. It's really important that you can get this real-time ERP posting with cash application. It's a major customer service benefit. It also can help you, if your CFO, your board of directors, your shareholders, your constituents, whoever they may be, are really driven towards DSO. And many of us over the years have had DSO metrics and SLAs we've had to live up to. It does drive down DSO, gets the money in faster. It also lets you know the money is in, and it improves your working capital metrics. It helps improve visibility and get things into the business. And one of the other side benefits of this, like I said, if you have customers with tight credit limits or tight, the ability they sort of live hand to mouth, it's going to drive revenue too, because you're going to be able to drive more sales with these customers. Finally, one of the things I want to talk about is the touchless workflow. So we've talked a lot about these different things. Really, we've now gotten to the point where it is an end-to-end automated process where payments are received, matched, and posted to the general ledger without human intervention. We have seen the vast majority of cases, at least in our business, where we get to north of about 92% automation. In some cases, we've seen closer to 100%, but you can use all these rules to do so. So the first step in this, of course, is, as we mentioned, using AI-powered OCR to extract the remittance data from a variety of sources, right? So now we're bringing everything in, we're pulling it in from a variety of sources. Step two, automated matching. We're pulling in the payment gateways, the banks, the ERPs, maybe it's your service portals like or your quoting and sales portals like your Salesforces and your ServiceNows, your email aliases, you name it, variety of error areas, structured and unstructured, pulling in, we're matching. Then we're handling the exceptions, we're pulling them out. We can route them in an automated fashion. We can follow up on them, whether it's following up directly with the customer with a documentation, a bill of lading, a proof of delivery, a contract, an invoice, you name it, or it's routing it to a salesperson or a shipping person, whomever it is. Autonomous exception management. Finally, we're integrating real time with your ERP, closing them out, making sure that your financial system of record is updated as quickly and efficiently as possible. If you are a company, you're a global company like we are, you might have multiple close periods in the day. We can follow the sun. You can follow the sun, making sure that you're posting in real time. So regardless of where your AP team sits or where your customers sit, you're getting real-time posting back to that ERP system. And then finally, one of the great features of Agentic AI is that predictive part. So if you recall in some of my earlier sessions, we talked about the difference between generative AI, old school AI, single source, can't really predict, maybe gives an outcome, but it can't really give you that next best platform of Agentic AI. We now have these predictive workflows, so it can suggest the next thing that you should do. How should you follow up on it? You can also monitor customers' payment behavior. Does this customer always pay on time? So maybe you don't need to send them those collection letters. Does this customer always pay 5 days late? So now you can manage that behavior knowing by how they pay. You have rules. It can learn how to act if customers, like the example I gave earlier, maybe they don't give you an invoice number or sales order number. All of this, you can build rules, you can build the guardrails around your system so that you can predict outcomes, and you can use these predictions to really drive proactive behavior with your customers. And ultimately, as we get to know our customers better and we get to predict their outcomes, it really does drive better customer satisfaction on the long run. Nobody wants to have a collector call them when they don't owe money. That is the worst thing. The days of lost checks, the checks in the mail, they don't get it. I'm very sorry, we have to hold your order because we didn't get payment. Can you show me proof you sent a check? No, I don't have proof I sent a check. I stuck it in an envelope and I sent it off snail mail. Oh, well, okay, your order's going to go, in 2 weeks, whenever we get that check. Those days are long gone. Payments come in, we use automated payment gateways. They come in, we match them automatically. We match them easily and simply and accurately. We get data from a variety of sources, and the end result is a much happier customer. So what's the future? Generative AI represents the next evolution beyond standard automation from matching data to understanding intent and context. And what I'm going to tell you is there is a typo on my screen. Do not believe this. I am talking about agentic AI and not generative AI. So, things happen. We didn't have proofreading on this. So when you see the word generative on the screen, I am really talking about agentic AI. And truly, where we're getting, we've done a lot of studies where we talk about what happened 5 years ago, what's happening now in 2026, and where you'll see. I was just in a discussion from a lot of the outsourcers, and they like to talk about what's 2030 going to look like. And what 2030, we don't know what 2030 is going to look like. But what I can tell you is that 2027, if you start looking at processes where there is agentic AI, it's going to make life much better for your customers. So you've got this traditional AI, this generative AI. It understood complex, unstructured data. It reads through, it could read through sources from a single source. Now we can go to a place where we're reading from multiple sources. We can personalize workflows to much more personalized experience for the customer. We're going to tailor our messages to the customer. We can do it, oftentimes those of us that operate in a global world, there are cultural differences, or there are business unit differences, or there are country, somebody might have rules of the country and how you can talk to somebody. For example, if you're talking about Europe, you've got the guidelines around GDPR. Using agentic AI, you can personalize workflows and actions based on business unit, region, culture, customer. That way, no message gets ignored, and and everybody is dealt with fairly accurately and timely. Let's move on now to a use case. I know we're running short on time, so I want to give everyone now a takeaway on something. I believe this is a case that almost everybody has. If you are operating in a business-to-business transaction environment, the thing is, the biggest problem I think most of us have had recently is, where do we find the remittance advice? I talk to customers and potential customers all day long. The biggest issue that they have is matching the remittance advice. Customers send it either to an email alias, they send it to, a collector specifically. They may send it to an information at email alias. They may want you to go pick up the information from a payment portal or a payment gateway, all these different areas. And that is the thing, everybody's been able to pull from the banks, but they haven't been able to address this. And this is where agentic AI comes in. So the problem is that we're forcing staff to manually contact the customers in the old way of doing things, so that when a payment is received without detail, you can't do anything about it except manually go do the research. So my use case for this is utilizing an agent. In our case, we use Gia. Go out, you pull the information, you pull the documents from multiple sources. You can pull in structured and unstructured data, and you can apply those money timely and easily. What is the impact? It takes you from manual research to a touchless, autonomous workflow. Your cash is applied faster without any or very little human intervention. With that, I want to leave you, I'll recap. Basically, it says it on the screen. Autonomous cash application turns cash posting into a touchless, intelligent workflow that accelerates cash, scales effortlessly, and redefines the role of AR. And my closing thought is, when Cash App becomes autonomous, then the finance team we're no longer chasing transactions. We've started to drive outcomes. We're seen as business leaders. We're seen as customer service providers. So with that, I want to thank everyone. I want to remind everyone that our next masterclass session is happening on April 16th. We're going to talk about customer payment self-service and AI-enabled customer experience. If you have any questions, comments, want to follow up with us, please feel free to email us at emagiainfo@emagia.com. Or my name is Phyllis Saavedra. Please reach out to me, phyllis.saavedra@emagia.com. or look me up on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to talk to everyone. So with that, have a great rest of your day, and thank you for joining us.